Yes. So I'm putting in, do you see the difference? Which one?
Yes, you wore more.
A little bit, yeah, but I think I should have worn more. Is this my right spot?
Yes,
And we just started talking.
that's right. Okay.
He was telling me, I guess.
Where's the police chief?
No, it's messed up.
It's messed up.
Oh, I have one in my office.
No, but I mean, you should have one from the village.
We voted him off the island.
How are you?
He said Manny's got more than all.
All right.
It's gonna be a long
Counselor, how are you?
Good evening.
No, I'm trying to get everybody out of here early. Everybody knows that, everybody heard that Painters opened up tonight. Nobody wants to sit here and listen to me drone on. Doris, that clock is not right. You know that my OCD is not gonna allow this to happen.
So special.
Senor, did we put a new battery in this?
In the one in the conference room, but not that one. I didn't notice that one.
Well, why don't we just switch the clocks?
All right, so it's 7. All right, start that.
Can you reach when we get them?
You got jokes tonight.
Close.
He's got cheese days.
Particular.
Not good cheese days. How are you?
Good.
All right, let's get going. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, you're gonna be front and center tonight. Okay, can I have everybody stand really quick for the pledge? And don't sit down after we're done. I have something else real quick. All right. At all, but we know that you'll do a good job looking out after our children. All right. Without further ado, then, do we have the? What's that? Yep, let me do, you have it on, up at the top, do public comment? Oh, okay, got it. All right, so I'd like to make a motion now to appoint Mr. William Grubel to the school crossing guard position at the intersection of River Avenue, Idlewild, Hudson Street, and Duncan Avenue at the rate of $16 per hour. May I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, you swept it. Welcome aboard. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
If you know what's good for you, you'll go home now and not sit through the rest of this. You're more than welcome to stay. All right. All right, thank you, sir. Now you want me to go to the appointment of, yep, and then I gotta come back and do the minutes. All right, so do we wanna do Susie's resignation first before we make the appointment? Let me do that.
Yeah, I got
All right, actually, you know what, let me, and then I'll come back. Find Susie's, and let me go ahead and do the minutes. So I'm gonna make a motion to approve the minutes from the July 15th, 2024 Village Board meeting. Again, that was a combined work session and business meeting. I believe everybody was in attendance at that, Bill, am I right? I think you were there. I think everybody was there, yes. So I'm gonna make a motion to approve the minutes from the July 15th, 2024 meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
You can choose which one. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. All right, so now, moving on, let me do, all right. So this is a tough one. So for the last 6+ years, Susie Yarmus has been our village's part-time clerk. And what does a part-time clerk do for the front office? She covers a shift between 10:30 in the morning and 2:30 in the afternoon, which is an important shift because people have to take lunch that are working in the office, and also handled a lot of the duties to assist the deputy village treasurer in handling bills and such, and provide compiling end-of-month data and statistics and things that we needed. Susie, if you knew her or met her, has one of the most pleasant personalities, is one of the happiest people. I've never seen her had a bad day. And she's worked for the village for just over 6 years, right? Just over 6 years. She and her husband are moving down south. They're moving down to the great Sunshine State, where half of New York always ends up. And we're gonna lose her after Friday. Friday's her last day. So I am going to make a motion to accept with regrets the resignation of Miss Susie Yarmus from the position of part-time village clerk. May I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, with that in mind, I am going to make the following resolution for Susie's replacement. The village clerk conducted a number of interviews. I sat in on the finals, and we decided to hire a person by the name of Mrs. Jacqueline Masterson. That's Masterson. So I'm going to make the following resolution and ask for its passage. Whereas the Village of Cornwall and Hudson is in currently need of a part-time clerk, and whereas Jacqueline Masterson expressed interest in the position, and whereas the village board is determined that Jacqueline Masterson is well qualified for the position of part-time clerk, now therefore be it hereby resolved that the village board hereby appoints Jacqueline Masterson to the position of part-time clerk to be compensated at the rate of $20 per hour, and be it further resolved that this appointment shall take effect on August 19th, 2024, which is tonight, and she will start tomorrow morning and work a left seat, right seat for succession planning with Susie until Susie's last day on Friday. Then the training wheels come off, and Jacqueline will start by herself the following Monday. So, may I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Where do you want me to go next on this? And you go to department reports? All right, so we're gonna move on to the department reports. Let me get this. That's that. That's that. Okay, so the reconciliation of monthly bank statements have occurred. And for July, the monthly water report, the village was $258,342.42. For the town, $459,922.78. For a grand total of $770,979.70. Warrant number 8, which includes all prepaids, is in a total amount of $345,922.54. And monthly revenues expenditure reports by fund are as follows. The general fund revenue, $3,792,609.90, with expenditures of $2,454,828.35. The water fund revenues, $2,287,223.53, with expenditures of $1,171,883.59. And finally, sewer funds revenues of $202,062 even, and expenditures of $256,554.82. For total receipts, $6,324,754.32, or 72.8704% in anticipated revenues. And $3,956,357.76, or 45.583% in anticipated expenditures through July. Just need a point there. The balance collected for sewer capital is a total of $591,086.35 through July. And Ms. Gazda, who for those don't know was deputy mayor of this village for a period of time, thank you for bringing that up. That is absolutely something that we do need to discuss within the village board internally to figure out if we're on the right track there as soon as we have our sewer meeting with the town. Our sewer meeting, that sounds funny to say that, but thank you for that. Total taxes collected through July 24th, $2,294,504.75. And some notes from the treasurer's office. Ongoing training is continuing between the deputy village clerk and the deputy village treasurer. Night class interest as of August 19th, 2024. Again, we talk about passive income. That was the $800,000 that we invested in our fund balance in night class, and the interest on that is $15,056.76. And budget amendment, budget line transfers to occur tonight. Correct. Okay, that's that. All right, any questions from any board member? All right, so moving on, I'm gonna have to jockey around, so who normally handles building department? Bill, is that you?
No, I think it's Dave.
Could you handle it for me
I can
tonight?
certainly handle it.
All right,
Yes. Village of Cornwall and Hudson Building Department, report for July 2024. There were 10 building permits issued, 21 certificate of compliance or occupancy issued, 22 on-site inspections, 3 violations, 0 stop work orders, 2 municipal searches, 0 solar panels, and 7 fire inspections. Manny A. Carmona, Code Enforcement Officer.
Senor, any follow-on?
No additional comments, sir.
All right, and we'll talk about the fee schedule when we get to that spot in the agenda, but nothing to add. Okay, all right, any questions from the board for the code enforcement officer? Nope, all right, very well. All right, moving on to the fire department. Lori Beth, would you mind handling that?
Yes. July 2024 department report. Structure fires, we had 1. EMS calls 9. Smoke investigation 1. False alarms 2. Motor vehicle accidents 1. Apparatus station maintenance 1. Drills 3. Work details 7. Meetings 2. Total of volunteer hours 1,213. Total events 27. It was a slow month apart from the fair. The fair was roughly 1,000 volunteer hours. Those are the hours for which a work detail was organized. It does not include the legwork that many people did individually, coordinating vendors, getting sponsors, purchasing supplies, working with the school district, etc.
All right, Chief, anything that, or actually, Mr. Chair, any, all right, Mr. Chief. I saw a lot of finger point. Without getting into a balance sheet or anything, did we do okay this year on the fair in regards to what we've normally done? Better, worse, equal, do we know?
I think it's somewhere around the same. I haven't seen it.
Got it. Right, looked like it was pretty well attended, so, but I mean, it's hard to tell. Okay. Anything to add, Mr. Chair?
The chief reports that 1,000 hours is a conservative estimate. A lot of, there were events that weren't, where the time wasn't tracked.
Got it. All right, thank you. Thank you for what you folks do in the fire company. All right, Bill, would you mind handling the police department?
The Cornwall and Hudson Police Department monthly report for July 1st through July 1st through 31st, 2024. 360 total calls for service. There were 0 felony calls. Under misdemeanors and violations, there was 1 call for criminal mischief, 2 petty larceny, and 2 harassment or aggravated harassment calls. Under arrests, there was 1 for misdemeanor. Vehicle and traffic, there was 1 personal injury accident, 4 property damage accidents, 13 traffic summonses issued, 2 traffic warnings issued, 2 parking summonses issued, 12 traffic enforcement posts, and 2 speed or radar sign postings. Non-criminal activity included 2 fire response calls, 1 domestic incident, 6 alarm response calls, 1 noise complaint, 2 suspicious incident calls, 4 animal complaints, 2 disorderly persons calls. And the department assisted the town of Cornwall PD twice, EMS 11 times, other police agencies once, performed 2 welfare checks, 7 citizens assists, and no other COH departments. During the month of July 2024, Cornwall and Hudson PD assisted with traffic and security for both the annual 4th of July parade and fireworks celebration and the annual Storm King Engine Company Firemen's Fair. Cornwall and Hudson PD requests formal resolution from the COH Village Board to purchase a 2023 Dodge Durango SUV police vehicle for approximately $55,990.08. Note that as captured in an inter-office memorandum from Deputy COH Village Clerk Paula Howard regarding how the monies for the same will be transferred, from Police Grants line A3090 in the amount of $51,810.08 to the Police Expense line A3120.4. The Crest grant does not allow reimbursement for the vehicle extended warranty cost of approximately $4,180, which is why there's a discrepancy between the size of the Crest grant and, this is my editorial, and the number that's here. The $51,810.08 will subsequently be reimbursed to the Village of Cornwall on Hudson via New York State Crest DASNY Grant Award disbursement payment. Further, the department requests a formal resolution from the COH Village Board to accept the resignation of Cornwall and Hudson Police Department part-time officer Alyssa Sanchez, who's accepted a full-time police officer position with the City of Poughkeepsie Police Department. For Sanchez's resignation will be effective August 15th, or has been effective August 15th, once approved. And the department requests a formal resolution from the COH Village Board to accept the resignation of Cornwall and Hudson PD part-time officer John Pena. Officer Pena's resignation will be effective August 30th, 2024. And the Village of Cornwall on Hudson PD requests formal resolution from the COH Village Board to surplus one 2017 Chevy Tahoe, VIN number 1GNSKFEC8HR231302, which is the old unmarked COH Chief of Police vehicle, and to sell the same to the town of Goshen, New York, for an agreed-upon price of $14,000. Note that based upon the current Kelly Blue Book value, it lists the value of that vehicle at approximately $15,000. Respectfully, Chief Stephen E. Dixon, who's had a busy month.
Chief, we'll do those resolutions when we get to them in the, on the agenda. Anything to add to Trustee Brain's,
Just
report.
today, they finished up installing the vehicle computers in all the marked units. So that came through a New York State Police grant I applied for last year.
excellent.
All brand new computers. The ones that we currently have now, we got about 10, 12 years ago, so they've kind of on their time.
Excellent. Okay. Makes sense. Any questions for the chief? All right, we'll get to your resolutions on the agenda. All right, moving on to Department of Public Works. Lori Beth, would you mind handling?
Sure. Department of Public Works, July 2024. Trash collected for the month, 113.25 tons. Recycling collected for the month, 12.50 tons. Yard waste collected for the month, 100 yards. Electronic items recycled. Don't have a number.
None yet, yeah.
Repairs and maintenance, village-owned vehicles and equipment. Mowing and trimming of village-owned properties has resumed. Sweeping of streets, blacktop patching. Assisted with traffic control for July 4th parade and fireworks display. Electric service in the barn at the farm in progress. Sewer manhole repairs have been completed, Paula Court and Jean Court. Notes, I'm asking the board to declare our 2003 case 721C with PIN JEE 012674 surplus to be sold and proceeds to go towards attachments for our new loader. David Halverson, Superintendent of Public Works.
We'll handle that under the resolution. Anything to add, Mr. Superintendent? All right. Any questions for Dave?
I have none.
Bill? No? All right, thank you. All right, Water Department. Bill, would you mind handling that?
Village of Cornwall on Hudson Water Department, July 2024 monthly report. Monthly production was 26,748,000 gallons with a daily average of 863,000 gallons. Sampling, we collected 42 samples under our approved water quality monitoring plan. Treatment, routine operations and maintenance, and repaired a chlorine leak at Jackson Avenue Water Treatment Plant. Transmission and distribution, there were 69 utility markouts completed. Water service shutoffs and turn-ons at owners' requests were done at 36 Broadway, 21 Quaker Avenue, 78 Academy Avenue, and 46 Firth Street. A curb box was repaired on Shelley Court. The service line leak was repaired at 15 Perry Road. New residential service taps were installed at 147 and 149 Main Street and 4 Military Lane. Temporary water line was installed on Clinton Street for ongoing Main Street bridge replacement work. The installation of 2 new separate water service lines at Donahue Farm for the house and the barn were completed. Meters, the department read commercial meters. 14 final water meter readings were completed. 4 residential water meters were replaced. 2 meter transmitters were replaced. 6 miscellaneous jobs completed, and 21 water line inspections were completed. As to property maintenance, routine weekly property mowing and weed whacked fire hydrants around the district. Sincerely, Michael P. Trainer, Senior, Water Superintendent.
Michael, anything to add?
No, sir.
Any questions for the Water Superintendent? Okay. All right, moving on. I'm gonna handle EMS, just to give the board an update that Chief Michael Bigg, who is the chief for the New Windsor EMS, and myself and the supervisor, the town supervisor, Josh Wojciechowski, met last week to begin our negotiations for the next contract. Everyone recalls that New Windsor provides contract services for BLS, basic life support, and ALS, meaning paramedic level or above, for the village of Cornwall and Hudson, as well as the town, out of their 1 Clinton Street address. And we are closing in on next July will be the end of the 3-year contract that we negotiated back in 2023. So we're in the process of doing that and hope to have that knitted together in the next month or so it's in place. We obviously want to stick with them. As you see, all these municipalities, the city of Newburgh, city of Middletown, that have gone to contract out with ambulance or mobile life or trying to think of the others, Empress, some of the different services. We are very lucky and blessed to have the service that we get from New Windsor EMS and Cornwall EMS. So the only thing I care about is, did we miss any calls? And for now, 2+ years, 2 years and 2 months, we have still not missed one call in the village or in the town. There were a total last month of 502 dispatches, 100% of calls covered. That brings us to a total of 3,500 calls for the year. 322 patients were transported, which is a record. 265 responses in New Windsor, 84 in the town of Cornwall, and 18 in our lovely village of Cornwall and Hudson. The average response time in New Windsor, 6 minutes and 24 seconds. 6 minutes and 1 second for the town of Cornwall, and 5 minutes and 12 seconds for Cornwall and Hudson. New Windsor covered 11 calls in the Cornwall and village, the town of Cornwall and village of Cornwall and Hudson area. New medications have been placed in all their ALS gear. TXA for massive bleeding. Anybody know what TXA is? Is that a code name for something?
Tourniquet something?
Yeah, okay, I'll find out. It sounds like that. IV antibiotics for open fractures, and we are the first EMS company in the region to have these and awaiting a new fly car to be completed and tricked out before the end of the year. Taxes have been filed with New York State. The budget for 2025 is now being developed. Obviously, that's why we're in negotiations with them. A new ALS agreement with Highlands EMS. A fee increased by 25%, new laptops given to all their crew members, updated antivirus software, and the Army is renewing an event contact for Army sports with us, and an agreement with Independent Living finalized for mental health providers to work with us out of the 1 Clinton Street station. So they're going to be in the Cornwall station. And that is it, Chief Michael Bigg. So that's all I got on that. Okay, moving on. That ends the monthly department reports, and the next item is to appoint our treasurer. So the village has operated without a treasurer, a part-time treasurer, for about the last year. And I've asked our deputy village treasurer, Paula Sebesta Howard, and our deputy village clerk, who's here tonight in the front row, Megan Gishwin, to kind of split the duties and just get it done, which saved the village a ton of money. For years and years, Gene Mahoney took this on and did this as kind of a side thing for the village for 10 years, I believe, which again helped the village in not having to hire a treasurer. The treasurer appointments are usually for 2 years. The village is allowed to hire somebody in a full-time or a part-time capacity. In the last few years, we've erred on the side of doing it as a part-time position and not as a full-time position. So tonight, we're going to appoint Megan, who will remain the deputy village clerk, but will also now officially have the title of treasurer. So she'll be appointed annually for the deputy village clerk position, but every 2 years for the treasurer position. So, whereas Megan Gishwin fulfills the requirements of the KSAs, as we used to say in the FBI, knowledge, skills, and abilities, and has the experience to perform the tasks required as village treasurer, and whereas pursuant to the New York State Village Law, Section 3-312, subsection 3B1, vacancies occurring in the Office of Village Treasurer which are not caused by the expiration of their term are filled by the mayor. And now therefore be it hereby resolved by the mayor of the village of Cornwall and Hudson, New York, that Megan Gishwind is hereby appointed treasurer of the village of Cornwall and Hudson for the remainder of the current term of office that expires at noon, April 7th, 2025. And in doing so, at a pro rata rate, she will receive the additional sum of $4,500 for the rest of this term. May I have a second?
Second.
It's a mayoral appointment.
Oh, I don't need,
Just you.
oh,
Take
all
my
right.
second.
all right. So I don't have to say anything, I just go,
That's why I wrote it.
oh.
So
all-
you
All right then. So, all right, you're hereby appointed, so careful what you wish for, and welcome aboard. So you are now officially Madam Deputy Village Clerk and Madam Treasurer. So, heavy is the head that wears the crown, or so I've heard. All right, moving on. With regrets, moving on to police matters. Officer Alyssa Sanchez. Gosh, Chief, how many months has she been here? She's been here
3.5.
That's it, yeah. The village board always interviews potential police candidates. We were impressed with Officer Sanchez, and while she has been here, she has done a very good job in the department and obviously around the village, because I talk to people and they see cops, hear and know the cops more than they know most village employees. They see them all the time on their routes, and we're going to regret losing her, but she's got a full-time position in the city of Poughkeepsie, the police department, which I know well because I worked with them when I was in the FBI up here, and it is a busy, busy, busy department. So we wish her well. So I'm going to ask for a resolution to accept the resignation with regrets of Cornwall and Hudson Police Officer Alyssa Sanchez. Officer Sanchez's resignation is effective August 15th, 2024. May I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the next one, we've been through this before, but it is to accept the resignation of Police Officer Johnny Pena. Johnny spent 20 years here and retired from the department. Gosh, has it been a year? It's been about a year. As our department sergeant, took a job with the Orange County Sheriff's Office, it was a perfect fit for him because he's in the school system now, the Cornwall Central School District, so he works in the middle school building, he works at the high school, and he works in the elementary school buildings as a sheriff's deputy, to be there to protect our kids while they're in school. It's a perfect position for him, but he gave us another year as an officer in the department and is moving on effective August 7th, so it's backdated too. So I'm going to make a motion to accept with supreme regret the resignation of Cornwall and Hudson Police Officer John Pena. Officer Pena's resignation is effective August 2nd, 2024. May I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
August 30th, I think.
Mine's,
August 2nd, because you were looking for a second.
Oh, no, I did say August, no,
it
you're right.
is August 30th,
Yeah.
correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, all right. So I'm sorry, let me amend that to say effective August 30th, 2024. May I have a second? I already got that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we've already accepted the resignation of our part-time clerk. The next item on here is, and we usually do this after the event, but I'm going to make a motion to authorize expenditures to the Cornwall Independence Day Committee, which has been around since Dwight David Eisenhower was president of the United States. I believe they came online in either 51 or 52. Well, so they've been around a long time. So we're going to make a donation from the village in the amount of $1,000 to the Cornwall 4th of July Committee for this past 4th of July. It costs a lot of money to put on the event that they do, which brings in between 8,000 to 10,000 people to the village and the town every year. They've done an amazing job. So may I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Special event application. Bill, do you want to say anything about this before I
exciting.
pass the resolution? Bill, and
exciting.
I'm only passing it off to Bill because he spent a lot of time with council and council's firm, ensuring that we got this right. We have a number of facilities and land in the village that we lease out. Whether it's the gazebo or the shelter at the north end of Donahue Memorial Park, the pavilion at the south end of Donahue Memorial Park. We haven't really got into it yet, but we're going to be doing that for the Donahue Farm property, the bandstand, which is in the center of town down here on Hudson Street, the village parking lot for events, and we do lease that out to groups, to private groups and to nonprofits. So without further ado, Bill's done a lot of work to make sure, he and the village clerk and our attorney, to make sure we got this right. Bill?
Yeah, so there were just a couple of different methods that we had for reserving facilities or putting in for a special event permit form. So we just wanted to streamline that and bring them together. So we designed a new form. I worked with Taurus and with attorney for the village's firm. And I think we've got a streamlined process. From time to time, as people apply for special events permits, there may be additional requirements. So depending on the size, depending on the scope of it, depending on the entity that's asking for it, and what kinds of components they're going to bring to bear, we may require them to show an insurance certificate, or we may require some other, might be code enforcement, site plan visits, things like that. So we just kind of tried to bring that all into a single form. So we have a single form, and it's essentially the same process that we follow as it is now. It's just the applicant fills in a form, submits it to the village office through the clerk's office. They'll determine whether or not it needs to pay a fee, or if there needs to be insurance, or if there needs to be any other requirements. Sometimes the board has to vote to allow for something to happen. Sometimes something can happen without a board vote, I believe. In any case, so the process will be roughly the same. This was really just to make sure we could capture the information. And I think, Doris, you have language around adopting this form, correct?
Yes. Mayor, do you want to make
Yeah.
a resolution?
Yeah, you have it right here? Perfect, let me borrow yours. All right. Be it hereby resolved by the Village Board of the Village of Cornwall and Hudson that the, quote, facility reservation event permit application, close quote, and associated fee schedule, copies of which are attached to the minutes of this meeting, are hereby approved. May I have a second?
Second.
Well,
get that one,
further discussion is, I'd like to thank Joe, I'd like to thank Doris, I'd like to thank Bill, because I know you folks put a lot of work in on this. Thank you for doing this. It was a heavy lift. It took a while to get it done, but we wanted to get it done right, and I
at the
think we did.
details.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Okay, next deal is the special event varsity swim and dive car wash. If you drive past Village Hall on most spring or summer Saturdays or Sundays, you'll often see community groups, generally from the high school, whether it's the cheerleaders or the wrestling team. In this instance, it's going to be the varsity swim and dive team from Cornwall Central High School that are going to do a car wash in here. I believe this is scheduled for August 31st. That day is a Sunday? Is that a Sunday, the 31st of August, or Saturday?
I'm not sure.
Okay, but they're looking to use Village Hall. We obviously supply the water. They bring their own detergent, their own sponges and buckets and all that, between the hours of 12 PM and 4 PM. So, any issues or concerns from the board before I make the resolution? All right, then I'm gonna make the resolution to allow the Cornwall Central School District's High School Green Dragon Swim and Dive Team to conduct a car wash at Village Hall on August 31st between the hours of 12 PM and 4 PM. May I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Special event, Real Essentials. Okay, so by way of background, last year, we really got into the business of film permits. I think COVID helped put the village on the map as far as being a scenic place. We obviously have much more traffic down to the waterfront. And now that the village owns the Donahue Farm property, that is also an attraction now too. And because we just have such serene and bucolic and just absolutely gorgeous, for lack of a better word, vistas from the Heights or from the Bayview area, Bayview Terrace area of the river and the mountains and all the things. So last year, the board and I kind of struggled to come up with a three-tiered plan for how we were going to charge people. Look, if HBO comes and wants to film a movie here, they're going to pay differently than if an independent film that, some young filmmaker has got a cast and crew of 7 people. And if 2 young high school kids want to shoot something on their cell phone and want to do a project or whatever, we're obviously going to treat those as 3 different tiers. And we did a middle tier one recently. I believe we charged $500 for the right to film. Here, it's the production cost, and then depending upon how big the production is, I spoke to the town of Newburgh, the city of Newburgh, the town of New Windsor. I spoke to the town of, I think it was Wallkill or Walden, and just asked their mayors and supervisors, how do you do it and what's the going rate? And just basically came up with a table and we worked off of that. Well, we just got a recent request from Real Essentials, and Real Essentials is, I guess, a clothing company. They're on Instagram. It's not a filmed production per se, but they've rented out a house at, is it 169 Mountain Road, tomorrow, and they're gonna have their talent, or the people that are gonna model their clothes, they're gonna use the backdrop of Storm King Mountain behind them, because that house is on Mountain Road, and it's an Airbnb. It's an Airbnb. And they've gotten clearance from the New York, New Jersey trails, the park rangers, to be able to use, because we don't own that property back there, it's parkland. But they did ask if they could use a portion of Mountain Road originally for 15 to 20 minutes, and now they're up to 40 or 45 minutes. So I factored in what that cost was gonna be. I gave them the number, and I said we would charge $500 for the permit to be there. And because you can't film something, even though they're just taking pictures and it's gonna be a real quick thing right by the trailhead there, you can't do it without shutting down a portion of Mountain Road. They're not gonna do it during commuting hours, because trust me, I was a longtime commuter to New York City from Cornwall and Hudson. You ain't shutting down Mountain Road between the hours of 5 in the morning and 9 in the morning, and you ain't shutting it down in the afternoon. Kids are out of school, we don't have to worry about school buses at 2 o'clock, but between the hours of 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock. So they're gonna shoot between 11 and 12 o'clock. The village clerk and I spoke to the chief. The chief is gonna have 2 police officers, so their overtime will be covered by this. We're gonna charge them a total of $2,500 for basically a couple of hours worth of work. But on Mountain Road, we will block off Mountain Road from the boulevard, because that's one way that you can get around. Because if you're trying to get up to 9W, you take the boulevard, you go around to Maple, and you come out on Maple Road, put you back up top, and we'll shut it down at Maple Road up there for a 1 hour period from 11 o'clock to 12 p.m. If anybody has any issues, you can send them to see the mayor, but it's a small price to pay to allow them to do this, and it's a helpful thing for us. It's money, so obviously is good for the village. And number 2, it's exposure, that they're actually taking these photos, which will be used as part of one of their clothing campaigns. And I feel like for 1 hour, just to make folks go around that, not during commuting hours, not while school's in session, I thought this was a fair thing to do. And I know that I've told the board about this, but I just gave them all the details tonight. Do you guys have any questions, concerns, issues, questions for the chief, or before we pass this resolution to allow this to happen?
Not to add to their burden, but this is one of those scenarios where I would wonder if we required that they showed that they have insurance and name the village as
They do.
additional insurer.
100%, Bill, and I should have mentioned that, but great for follow-up. Absolutely. So we don't allow any productions to happen in the village without them having some type of indemnification. And Joe, is it called a hold harmless for the village? Is that what we call it?
Yeah, hold harmless agreement, indemnification agreement.
So that's built
You can
into
use-
all uses
you
of
can
village
use-
property or special events, but there's also sometimes the requirement that they show a certain level of insurance so that if there is anything goes wrong and there's a claim, we know that it's not just our insurance company that's on the hook for it, it would be the insurance company for the applicant. Is that accurate?
And that is,
Did I say that right?
I couldn't have said it better. And
No, counselor.
and that is something that we should follow up with the village's insurance advisor.
All right. Well, may I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Chief, you got your marching orders. Any issues? And I know Dave knows about it, but you're comfortable, you've got the guys, and you're comfortable that you'll just pull the marked units there, and if you need sawhorses or cones, you'll coordinate with Dave for that. Excellent. All right, thank you then. So that's done. Let's move on to surplus police vehicle, the 2017 Chevrolet Tahoe. I'm gonna make a motion to surplus the 2017 Police Department Chevrolet Tahoe. VIN number 1, G is in golf, N is in November, S is in Sierra, K is in Kilo, F is in Foxtrot, E is in Echo, C is in Charlie, 8, H is in Hotel, R is in Romeo, 231302, or in other terms, the old unmarked chief of police vehicle, and to sell same to the town of Goshen, New York, for an agreed-upon price of $14,000. Chief, very good job of getting us as close to Kelly Blue Book value as possible for that. Well done on that, and I'm glad it's gonna stay in police hands. That makes me very happy. May I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on. Surplus Department of Public Works, 2003, case 721C Charlie. I'm going to make a motion to declare our 2003 case 721C Charlie with the PIN of J as in Juliet, E as in Echo, E as in Echo, 012674 surplus to be sold, and the proceeds to go towards attachments for our new loader. May I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Alibi. Just in terms of further discussion, this takes one loader out of the fleet, and then, but we're getting attachments for another one. Do we already have a replacement vehicle that's in the fleet? I think we did acquire one, right?
Our new
Yeah.
machine we ordered about a year ago, it came in a couple months ago. We have it in service. What I'm looking to do is purchase a second bucket for the new machine, which is rather expensive, and use the proceeds to cover that.
Thank you. We already passed it, so. we're good.
Okay. All right, excellent. That's done. Next item is the budget line amendment, which trustee Brain mentioned in the police report for COHPD for the police to purchase a 2023 Dodge Durango. I'm going to make the motion to increase Alpha 3090, which is the police grants line, in the amount of $51,810.08 for the DASNY, which stands for Dormitory Authority of the State of New York grant, and also increase Alpha 3120.4, or the police expense line, in the amount of $51,810.08 for the purchase of a police vehicle under the DASNY grant. May I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Just so I understand, we're only increasing one of these two lines, right? Police grants yes, got it. Never mind. Police income versus expense. Got it. Thank you.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next item, budget line transfer from the treasurer's salary line to the records management clerk. Making a motion to increase Alpha 1132.1 treasurer's salary, we now have a treasurer, in the amount of $2,080, and to increase Alpha 1460.1 record management salary in the amount of $2,080. May I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and this will make more sense when we do the next one, which is a salary adjustment for the records management clerk. Our records management clerk has been with us now for 2 years. She was hired as an intern because New York State was offering grant money to convert usable space inside a municipal building into a records management room. We never had it. We had legal boxes and we stored them underneath tables, and we didn't have a room that was climate controlled, that was, I hate to say flood-proof, but as close to flood-proof as possible, fire retardant, an organized filing system, and really, really brought us into the 21st century. We're now in the process of digitizing and scanning documents. We're caught up on destroying records that need to be destroyed because you have a period of time you have to keep them, and then you're allowed to shred them. But we have important documents. We have ledgers that date back to the late 19th century, like 1887 ledgers, with literally quill and ink entries in them that have to be protected, that are literally part of this village's fiber. So there's that, and we were able to, under the grant, hire somebody at the bargain basement price of $16 an hour for the work. And the person has done an outstanding job for us. We made a decision last year in the budget to actually create the position of a village records management clerk, of which Barbara has jumped in on with 2 feet and been able to do. If we ask for something, she can find it for you in record time, excuse the pun. So going forward, the village realizes this is something that we would like to maintain, this position. There's also the ability to use her and flex her if somebody's out, if somebody's sick, if we've got to help out down at the DPW building for a water thing or a building department thing, we can move her around. So we are going to, she's currently making $18 an hour. We are going to raise her to $20 an hour. And she's worked very capably and honorably for 2 years here, so we believe it's the right thing to do. So I'm going to make the motion to adjust the record clerk's salary from $18 per hour effective today to $20 per hour. May I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. The next one. Okay. So we have and this is probably a good time for me to say this, because Facebook is never the best place. I shouldn't say not the place to get answers to things, but it's never the place to go to seek answers to things. Our doors are always open. I can say this about the code enforcement officer, the police chief, the water superintendent, the fire chief, the DPW superintendent, and the mayor. If you have an issue or problem with something, come see us. But apparently, I've seen in a couple different places on the social media platforms, a little bit of fear about a potential project that is supposed to be undertaken that's going to involve a number of single-family homes. I will say this about that project. I have zero to do with anything that goes, and we have a member of the planning board, Vicious, in the audience right now. I don't attend village planning board meetings. I don't attend village zoning board of appeals meetings. I don't think it's appropriate. I do like to know what's going on. We have a comprehensive plan that this previous board in 2021, after 60 years, voted into place, which gives the guidance for what we envision, what we being the village envision we want this place to look like, this place we call home. But if things are zoned appropriately, we don't put our fingers on the scales and we don't say, well, I want this or I don't want this. It's got to go through the process. And the town has already dealt with this and is still dealing with it with the Treetop project and the Biagini Woods project. Those are much bigger scale. This is something smaller. But I want to say that as we look at projects, one of the important things that we want to do is we don't want to happen what happened at the golf course. We don't want mature growth trees being clear cut. And we want to have a plan in place, especially because much of the village, we're on a mountain, much of the village is on a slope. And you have to have concerns about erosion. Remember, I always talk about Mountain Road and what we do at the top of the mountain with stormwater management. It impacts the middle of the mountain, and the middle of the mountain impacts the lower part of the mountain, and everything, all the water's just trying to get to the Hudson. Well, it's the same thing with trees. If you cut trees down, we have to look at things and we have to make sure that we're being smart about it. And that's why the planning board and the zoning board of appeals are paid such the big bucks they are to make those tough decisions. Now, what are our responsibility? Our responsibility here, I believe, and I think the board supports me on this, is to pass a tree preservation law. Now, again, the fear-mongering that comes from that. Oh my gosh, you're going to tell Mrs. McGillicuddy she can't prune the lilac bush that's obstructing her garage. Not that at all. It doesn't impact her and that type of, you want to take a tree down on your property. It's your tree. It's your property. We're not looking to be Big Brother. What we're looking to do is, if there is development, if somebody buys a golf course in the village, which we don't have a golf course, are we being smart about what we allow done? And if somebody wants to develop and put homes in a place that is zoned residential, we just want to make sure that we have a tree preservation in law that is going to help protect us. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop development as long as it's zoned and as long as it goes through the process. And the village board doesn't weigh in on that, at least at this juncture. There's nothing that comes before us on that. But that's the purpose of what we're doing next. The town passed it. The Cornwall Conservation Advisory Council, of which Dave Carnwright is not here tonight, but he sat in on every one of those meetings and briefed this board on it. The town has passed it. The village is going to pass something very close to that. That's my guess. Very close to that. But we had our attorney look at it to make sure that everything in the town doesn't apply in the village. There are small differences. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set a public hearing. And the public hearing will be set for September, which will allow and provide the public an opportunity to, we'll make the tree preservation law, which is already on the town's website. It's already passed in the town. We will put it on our website. If you want a paper copy, I'm happy to make one for you. I operate off of paper, so I have a paper copy of it. But we will then open it up for the public to weigh in on it, and then the board will vote on whether or not we'll pass it or not. I think it's a good thing. I'm a pro-smart development guy. I'm also a tree hugger, so I try to balance those two equities together, which is sometimes hard to do, but I think that's what we're charged to do up here. So here it is. I'm going to make the resolution now and get the board to pass it. So, whereas the village board believes that it is necessary to create a new chapter of the village code, chapter 153, to preserve and protect the benefits derived from trees, entitled, quote, tree preservation, and, close quote. And whereas the village board wishes to set a time and place for a public hearing on an introductory local law to amend to chapter 153, now therefore it is hereby resolved that the village board hereby determines that it will be the lead agency with respect to the review of the proposed local law, hereafter referred to as the project, in accordance with the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, or SECRA, and Part 617 of the regulations implementing SECRA, since there are no other agencies that have the authority to approve the project. And let it be further resolved that the village board hereby classifies the action as an unlisted action under SECRA, and let it be further resolved, that a public hearing be held by the village board in order to receive comments and suggestions regarding the proposed local law concerning tree preservation, and to receive any comments concerning the potential adverse environmental impacts of the proposed legislation in accord with SECRA on September 16th, 2024 at 7 p.m. at the Village Hall located at 325 Hudson Street, Cornwall, Hudson, New York, right inside this room here. And it is further resolved that the village clerk is hereby authorized and directed to cause said public notice of said hearing to be given as provided by law. Okay, next month, the village work session is on the 9th, and then the business meeting is on the 16th, a week later, and this will be at the business meeting on the 16th. May I have a second?
Second.
Counselor, anything to weigh in on this in regards to this? Did I capture it?
You got it all right. This is not a part of our zoning code. This is actually in a different section of our code. If this were a zoning regulation, it would be a mandatory referral to the planning board. So in this case, it's not mandatory, but we had this discussion at a prior meeting, and at my suggestion, goading, I suggested to the board that the local law be provided to the planning board, zoning board of appeals, and also to our building department, because they're going to have to administer it. So let's get their comments now. So last Friday, I distributed that to the village board, the building department, planning board, and zoning board of appeals members. Tomorrow night, I'll be meeting with the planning board, and I'll discuss it with them. So we've scheduled when you vote, I know you haven't voted yet, it'll be scheduled for next month. And I think the reason for doing that, and I had a discussion with the deputy mayor about this, is just to keep the process moving forward. So if, for instance, the planning board meets and they want some more time to provide written comments to this board, or if the building department needs additional time to provide you with comments, you can simply decide in September to hold the public hearing open for additional comments from your departments or from the public. But the point is, it keeps the process going forward. There is we'll be speaking about housing in a minute. There is on the table right now a new application to the planning board that, at least for the moment, proposes 20 new dwellings. So it is important to at least have this in effect because of the example that you gave, Mayor, which is you have a property that's zoned residential. They're allowed to build housing there. They want to put some housing in. The governor issued an executive order to promote housing. But on the other hand, you don't want someone to come in and cut down all the trees, right? So it's a good time to be moving this draft legislation forward. That's all I have to say.
Well said. Further discussion from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Doris, I'd like to ask that the clerk's office make sure we post that on our website, and maybe a tickler for me, a reminder to put out a mayor's message, I'll put it on social media, encouraging people to take a look at it, because I think as soon as you say that you're gonna pass a law on trees, that's gonna bring people out on both sides of the argument, and they're gonna panic, and I'd rather tamp some of that down now and explain what the purpose is, what the motive is behind this, and why we think this would be a good thing for the village.
And before it gets posted, I did get your email, Doris. I'll provide you with a public hearing notice. What I have distributed to the boards contains my own personal comments and some questions. So what I can do is I can get a version for public consumption, and we can which will be the law as presented at this point. So I'll get you that, and that's the one that you can post to the website.
Perfect. All right, thank you, Judge. All right, we just passed that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sir, only because you're on the village planning boards, but
Relevant to this is, until this law is passed, people are golf course type situation can
Yeah.
happen again?
yeah, so we did a little research on that. Yes, because if somebody has an application in, it's the same thing about changing the rules midstream if they have an application in. Now, where that behooves the village board is to talk to somebody that had plans and say, this is what's going to be put into place and this is what we're seeking to do. And while we can't hold you to this right now, this is what our goals are going forward, and we'd love it if you could hew to that in your project going forward. But I don't believe, Manny, you want to, did I mangle that?
I mean, you're right, it could happen because we can't hold anybody accountable for that yet, but the planning board does have the power to require and review landscaping on development.
Bingo. Okay, good. All right. Thank you, Manny. All right, so we did pass that. Next item of business that I have is public hearing for okay, are we moving on to other business? Other business. All right, and perfect segue into this. So, back in 2023, I believe it was early in 2023, Governor Hochul passed an executive order regarding pro-housing communities. And I would encourage anybody interested to go online and look at it. There's a website that speaks to it and that discusses what the intent is. Now, we can all have difference of opinions in regards to, people like things that come out of Albany, they don't like things that come out of Albany. It's why we live in a democracy, right? So, I'm a firm believer in home rule. But I'm also a firm believer that sometimes something might make sense, and it's good to have a robust debate about it. My children cannot afford to live in the village of Cornwall and Hudson, and they all have good jobs. They can't afford to live here. And one of the biggest complaints we have is, young people can't live here, and they grew up here, but once they leave their parents' houses, they can't afford to buy a house. Okay, but you also have to balance that with the fact that we love our green spaces here. And we love the fact that up on the mountain, you have to have 5 acres to build. And then somewhere, there's part where it's 2.5 acres. And down in the village, it can't be less than 1/4 or 1/3 of an acre. And there's a reason for that. We are against high-density housing. We don't want that here. We don't want skyscrapers built, and we don't want sprawling homes with, 26, families inside on a 1-acre lot. But we also have to be smart about what we're doing. I have a feeling that with this pro-housing community advisement, the governor's goal is that more affordable housing is provided. Well, how do you do that? You can stomp your feet about it and say, no, we're not going to do it. But they do it. They do a calculation for how much land you have, what your population density is, how many available units there are, how many units in total there are, and they come up with a number. So for a community like the village of Cornwall and Hudson, where we have 3,000 residents, maybe 400 homes or something like that, it's not as much as you would think if they came down and required it. Now, I don't want to be required to do anything. I don't want to be told that we have to do this. But this pro-housing community plan right now is aspirational. And what does that mean? That means if we sign on to this, and I'm going to turn it over to our attorney in a minute because I asked him, I watched the town meeting the other night because they passed it. And their attorney, Mr. Gaba, weighed in on it because there were concerns from residents that were sitting in the audience, and there were concerns from council members that said, oh my gosh, if you do this, you're going to compel us to have to build more housing. Well, this part of it doesn't compel you to do anything. It does require that you provide some data in New York State. And I have argued from the beginning, we are a transparent village. You want to come look at our books? Come look at them. You want to come read this? Come do it. You want to know what numbers we have? I think that's entirely appropriate. It is an aspirational enterprise. And in return for that, now you can argue, well, Jimmy, you're having your arm twisted and this is extortion, because if they do compel us to do this, and it could happen next year, what will they do? If we're not part of it, they'll take away grant funding. So they'll take away our tax dollars that we pay up there. It's not going to come back here because they're going to argue that you're not part of this pro-housing community endeavor. I don't see anything wrong with doing this so long as council and the town ask the same questions of their council, so long as it doesn't lock us into anything for the next year or so, because they will ask, are you a pro-housing community signatory? Are you part of this or not? And it may make us ineligible for certain grants. Now, keep in mind, we don't live in an environmental justice zone. We are a community of means, for better or for worse, and that limits us in what we can. Trust me, I'm looking at and writing grants all the time. We're limited on what we can get because we live in a good community. We like it. We're happy with it. Our taxes are high because of that. There's low crime because of that, but it also limits us. So my argument would be, and I've read through it, I've spoken about this with the deputy mayor because I was concerned that maybe they could take back something they'd already redistributed to us, like the New York Forward grant money, because I don't know if that money's been obligated yet or not. It was announced that we got the grant in February of 2023. I think the governor's executive order was either right before that or right after that. So we need to determine whether or not that's going to impact us. I don't think at first blush it's going to, but going forward it will. And in all likelihood, if I read the political tea leaves the way that I sometimes try to do and always make a mistake when I do, it's very likely next year that we're going to be come down and told that we have to do that. So my argument on this is, and I'll turn it over to Joe, this is aspirational. This does not compel us to do anything, but it also keeps us in the flow to have the opportunity to get whatever grant money that we are desperately going to need to replace our aging water infrastructure, to replace our aging stormwater management system. Those are things that I think about every day. How are we going to afford to pay for this? Joe, you want to weigh in on my statement that this would not bind us to anything and it would not hurt at this juncture for us to agree to do this?
Well, I think the first thing to say is there's nothing that needs to be done tonight.
Right.
Right.
We're not passing a
So
resolution.
there's no resolution, there's no deadline to acquiesce to what the state is requesting.
Become a signatory.
So there's nothing to do with any urgency. On July 18th, 2023, Governor Hochul issued an executive order. Now, based upon what you just said, that was after this village received
The village and the town received the New York
the New York
Forward.
Forward grant. And I'll just cut right to the chase. There's nothing online, there's nothing in the executive order, there's nothing that I've found anywhere that says whether or not this certification program will affect what the village and the town received last year. It does say clearly that there are groups of programs that will be affected, and there are several of them, including most importantly, the New York Forward program.
For
But
new
it-
applicants to.
That's what it appears to be. It's not definitive. The website says that this program is in effect now. Our New York Forward grant came before the executive order. But, as you said, it's been awarded. Have the funds been segregated?
Obligated.
Obligate. Did you cash the check yet, Mayor? Yeah, so we have to be careful. And I don't think that we're going to see anything in anything that's online. I think it's up for us to do our due diligence and get some specific answers, particularly in the context of the New York Forward grant. But which you know, I'm not telling the board anything you're not already aware of. But having said that, right now, the executive order sets up a certification program, and it's designed to address the increased housing costs in New York State and the lack of affordable housing in New York State. So it sets up a program where local governments, specifically cities, towns, and villages, can choose to become pro-community housing certified. And then, once you are pro-community housing certified, you can get priority with respect to certain funding programs. And in addition to the New York Forward program, It's the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, the Regional City Capital Fund, New York Main Streets Program, Market New York Capital Grants, Mid-Hudson Momentum Fund. Now, I don't know what that is, but it seems to affect someone around here, right? And other future programs. And again, right now, there's the way to, so the fact is, this is a way to prioritize funding. Say that a little differently. If you're not in the program, you may not be funded. That's essentially, I think, the proper way to read this. So the question is, should you apply and how do you apply? Right now, the state is just requesting a letter of intent and is asking that the municipality, as you said, Mayor, provide certain information concerning its zoning regulations, how many permits were issued and the like, population, demographics, and things like that. The letter of intent, I guess, is in the form of a draft or a model resolution that's come down from the state, and it essentially says the resolution uses the word pledge, that the village would pledge to become part or seek certification under this program and be one of the communities that endeavors to implement the goals of the program, and among them would be streamlining permitting for multifamily housing, affordable housing, accessible dwelling units, supportive housing, adopting policies that affirmatively further fair housing, incorporating regional housing needs into planning decisions, increasing development capacity for residential uses, and enacting policies that encourage a broad range of housing development, including multifamily, affordable, accessible, accessory, and supportive housing. And again, the resolution uses the word pledge. There's nothing here that seems to be binding on the village. If you were to go forward and adopt this resolution and make such a pledge and seek certification, there's certainly nothing in what's available online or in the executive order that says you couldn't stop that process at any time.
That's my understanding. You just boiled it down. That's my understanding of it.
And the what's looming on the horizon is what happens if you don't, which is if you're not prioritized for these funds,
Don't bother putting in for them.
that could be what happens.
I did ask, Bill, I know you got an opinion, you did a little research on it too. You have some thoughts?
Yeah, just as we do our due diligence and make sure that, for example, funding that's already been verbally and contractually obligated to us can't be withdrawn. It is just a question of, it's very similar, it seems similar to me on the surface to the climate smart communities. You sort of pass a resolution that says we are a pro-housing community. We want to be able to increase the housing stock judiciously and at a reasonable threshold that's included in here, and then that keeps you eligible for grants. So to me, that's what it looks like. There is an FAQ online that one of the lines in that says, and clearly this. We can pass a resolution that goes through what Joe just said, that we would endeavor to make housing a little easier to build or permit. What it said here is, the FAQ says, the resolution is a statement of values, not a commitment to execute every option listed within the resolution. So that's how they're positioning it at the moment. And what I will say, the other piece of my little, and I've only just begun my due diligence, is that our comprehensive plan does speak to the idea of making housing more accessible and more affordable by allowing some of the same things that are in that resolution. So I think on the surface, it kind of seems to align with what we have said we want to do as a village. In the comp plan, there's more exploration to be done before we vote on anything or anything like that, but I think it makes sense. And the call out for accessory dwelling units, that is something that I personally think is a reasonable thing to explore, and that would mean, so we already have code that governs accessory apartments, meaning you can build an apartment within an attached structure adjacent, within your home, or attached to it. But accessory dwelling units might be an option to do smaller, not tiny homes exactly, but guest-sized houses on larger lots and things like that. So that's something that might be worth exploring, and that is included in there. And I know that there's this town supervisor let me know that there's RUPCO. I don't know that much about the organization. I know they're a venerable organization. They're offering grants for, I gather, what they're offering are grants for individual homeowners who want to build an accessory dwelling unit. However, for those grants to be applicable, the municipality has to allow for accessory dwelling units. And we don't currently have code that governs accessory dwelling units themselves. So anyway, that's just one component of this whole thing. It's interesting. I will say that there's two ways to be considered a pro-housing community under this program. The one that we currently qualify for would be to pass this model resolution and write the letter of intent, which is all 9, and provide the data. The other way is to show in your records that you have actually expanded your housing supply by at least 1%. In our case, it would be actually 1% per year, or a 3% over 3 years. There is that, a project like the one that we were just, touching on, this proposed potential pre-application concept project that may or may not happen. 20 houses within Cornwall on Hudson would probably put us in that first bucket where we wouldn't have to pass a resolution. We would just say, yeah, look, people build houses here. We're a pro-housing community, and we'd stay eligible for grants. But we'd have that's anyway. It's a couple of years before these things are resolved in that way. So.
And it is, part of it is playing chess, is looking at, reasonable development that might be coming before the planning board in the near future, or the zoning board of appeals, and going, if it makes sense for Cornwall, or the village of Cornwall and Hudson, maybe we might consider that, because it does, it takes that issue off the plate that, well, you haven't developed anything, you haven't built anything there, and now all of a sudden then we get the squeeze on us. And again, I don't want to miss out, because we are relying heavily right now on grant money to do things here. We are, and we've had a nice period here of abundance, in the sense that we've been able to pay the bills, we've been able to save money, and we have a healthy and robust fund balance. But all it takes is a major catastrophic collapse of one of our dams up in Black Rock, one of them which would require $2 million worth of remediations on. All it takes is one of our water mains to explode, or for, us to get another one of these hyper-localized storms. We had 4 of them in a 13-month period across the last year and a half, and the damage it does on the mountain and down below from our 100-year-old water system that just our stormwater system, that as we're moving forward and these storms are getting more and more frequent and greater volume of water, we can't fix. And so that's why we have to be available in a position to put in for grant opportunities. It's the only way to do it.
My thoughts on having to sign the pledge, it makes me worry that our tree law and our zoning are all in place to protect the beauty of our area. And I worry that that's giving up those powers that we have to someone else, not being completely clear. Can we get out of it? Is at any time, or is that something we're assuming? I mean, it just seems so, I read it, and it seems like there's a whole bunch of unanswered questions and open-ended things that make me very
I think you read correctly. Yeah. It's very open-ended endeavor. Pledge.
But that's the same thing, and Bill mentioned the climate smart communities, and we signed on to that a number of years ago, and there were a lot of people that were fearful of that too. Well, it's going to require this, you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do that, and really that wasn't it. It just puts us in a better position. There were certain things, putting in an EV charging station, there were certain things that putting in solar panels, there were certain things that you could do to get more points, and again, it helps us. I mean, look, we're New York State's not going to go away from this. We should have laws and code in place to protect what we want to protect. But again, if we still have areas that are owned by private citizens that can be developed, and it's being developed under the auspices of our comprehensive plan, our planning board's guidelines, our zoning board of appeals, I don't know how you stop it from happening. I don't.
And the likelihood is because it's a village and because it's a small village and because it's essentially almost built out for lack of a better term, anything that this village does would likely be very incremental. You know, given the conceptually the governor wants to increase housing throughout the state. Well, cities throughout the state can probably have a big impact by modifying their regulations to actually increase housing in a short period of time. The towns probably have a lesser ability to do that. Villages have a lesser ability to do that. And when you're talking about an old, small geographic village like ours, it would probably have even less of an impact statewide and probably happen on an even more incremental scale.
So what I want to happen tonight was just an introduction to this. We're not passing any resolution tonight because, and I've done a ton of reading on it. I know Bill has, I certainly know council has, Jim Kane has, I know you've looked at it too. I want this on the agenda for the work session on the 9th of September, and we will just go into a deeper dive on it and see what our feelings are. I do want to speak to some other communities, some that have refused to sign it, and some that have. And you would be surprised because you'd look at some of the leadership in those places and it's opposite of what you think. So I just want to do a little bit more research on it. I want the board to do the same. And Madam Clerk, just please make sure it's on the agenda for September 9th. All right, thank you on that. Let's move on to kayak companies' operations at the Donahue Memorial Park. Kayak companies have been operating in and around the village for almost 20 years. Now, the village board came up had a resolution for how they were going to grant permits and the use of Cornwall Landing in the Donahue Memorial Park riverfront to allow for kayak excursions, tours, and rowing tours. There are currently 4 entities that operate out of the waterfront that are considered quote-unquote companies. There are 2 kayak companies, Mountain Valley Guides and Storm King Adventure Tours. There are 2 rowing clubs. Now, the rowing clubs are nonprofits. You have San Miguel Academy in Newburgh that uses Cornwall and our waterfront to do their program down there, and they have been value added in that they have a partnership, San Miguel Academy in Newburgh, with the U.S. Rowing Association. So literally, the U.S. Rowing Association was down here a couple of months ago for one of their new shells to get that was donated by alumni to get it blessed, or they did the champagne thing. So they're value added down there. The Orange County Rowing Association uses the waterfront down there, and we have 78 parking spaces. We have 3 handicap parking spaces, and we have 8 trailer parking spaces that are for the use of the general public. Now, for the kayak companies, it applies to the Rowing Association too, but they just don't have as much volume as the kayak companies do. We only have 2. And what the board, and I spoke to Jim Kane about this at length, and he was involved in our executive session before this meeting. On April 17th of 2017, the board came up with the rules of the road for how we were going to allow them to operate down there. There's a reason we only have 2 that are down there. We don't want it to overwhelm down there. It is value added. It brings tourists here. My family has used one of the companies to go out when they were in town. People in the village like to use it, and people in the surrounding area like to use it as well. It's a good thing for the village. It also brings in revenue. We charge them a permit fee, and we charge them for permits for vehicles that are down there and for their boat trailers as well. Now, having said all that, I don't think this village board would want to increase the number of kayak companies that work out down there. I think that 2 is plenty enough, and would not allow it to be an outside company. You have to have your business in the village of Cornwall and Hudson, and both do. One is on Duncan Avenue, and the other one operates out of the Storm King Theater. So they are local companies. Having said that, I have received a number of complaints of recent in regards to their operations down there. And the deputy mayor and I had a meeting with Mr. Garrison, who owns and operates Mountain Valley Guides, and Mr. Coyne, who owns and operates Storm King Adventure Tours, just to make sure that we were still following the rules of the road down there. Some things we've gotten lax in the last couple of years that were put in place in 2017 aren't necessarily always happening. One is, before the season, there is supposed to be a meeting with the public safety officials from the fire department for the rowing companies, the rowing associations, as well as the kayak companies. Number two, anytime an excursion goes out, whatever you call it, an excursion or a tour, there should be no more than 36 vessels, crafts, whatever you want to call them, kayaks, in the water at one time per company. The other thing that I've asked them to do and to consider, and it hasn't been done in the past, is to stagger their launches. One company puts their schedules out in like December, the other puts their schedule out for the upcoming season in the spring. And we've asked them to work it out so that we don't have both companies down there trying to do a 9 a.m. launch. And you have to understand, they have to work around tides, and they have to work around in the summertime when there's daylight and when it gets dark and when it's dusk, because we want them to make money because their season is essentially 4 months, and then that's it. The other 8 months, they're cleaning their kayaks. So we want them to do well down there. But they also have to share the park with Mrs. McGillicuddy. They also have to share the park with the train spotters, the old gentlemen that sit down there and watch the trains come by every day. They have to share the park with the Cornwall Yacht Club. They have to share the park with the people that go down there and walk their dogs. And they have to share the park with visitors, people that just show up and want to cook out or do whatever. So we are going to insist that the rules are followed. Some of the rules, before they go out on an excursion, only 36 at a time, and one guide per 8 to 10 kayakers. One guide per 8 to 10 kayakers, not one guide for 36 kayaks. Make sure we're enforcing that. No alcohol. Now, I don't want to send the police down there to sniff every mother who's down there with a 5-year-old who's running around. She's got a mommy sippy cup. I don't want to check to make sure it's coffee or red wine. We don't want to be in the business of doing that, but we also don't want the kayak companies or any business operating out down there and using alcohol as part of the tour, because the rules are pretty strict in the village. You can't transport booze through the park. So you can't say, well, we're not doing it down here at the park. We're just carrying it to a kayak, taking it out to the middle of the Hudson. And Jimmy, you don't control the Hudson. And you're right, but it's the rules that we have that is not part of what we allow. Things like their muster. So muster is like if you're on a plane in the military, you have to have a muster which shows who is everybody on the plane. All right, Lieutenant so-and-so, Captain so-and-so, Sergeant so-and-so, Private so-and-so, and you have a list. Every tour that goes out, they're supposed to fill out a form, what the kayak number is, who's in it, and leave it in a lockbox down there. God forbid the fire company or the Orange County Sheriff's Office gets called to make a rescue and doesn't know who's out there, how many, and who's in the water. So this is on us and it's on me to be more engaged in enforcing this. And I'm going to work this out with the two kayak companies. We're going to make sure that this form gets executed and signed every year, because we haven't been doing that, requiring them to follow this. It says all applicants must pay the proper annual permit fee and trailer parking fees, of course. All trailers shall be parked in only designated trailer parking area, of course. Applicants have a float plan approved by the Storm King Fire Department. Applicants use a drop box in Donahue Park to place a float plan or a muster every time an excursion tour occurs. Some first aid and CPR requirements on here. And again, 36 per tour. I don't want two kayak companies down there at the same time, because that puts you at 72 craft. And I went down there the other day, and the beachhead, which doesn't belong to the Cornwall Yacht Club, it doesn't belong to me, it doesn't belong to the kayak companies, it belongs to all of us. And if you've got 72 kayaks down there, it's not fair to everybody else. So we're going to work it out with them where they stagger their departures. They're going to make sure that they hew to the 36 in the water at one time, because I've seen photos, I didn't see this firsthand, of 100 kayaks in the water. And that's just not acceptable. And again, I understand they're trying to make a living, and I understand their value added to the village, but we're just going to make sure that they adhere to the standards here, because I have gotten a lot of complaints this year in regard to space and usage down there at the waterfront. All right, that's my update on kayak company operations. Okay, next thing, this is something that Senator Skoufis is looking to do in Woodbury, and it is the combining of the town and the village. And I know a number of years ago, we had talked about, I know Highland and Highland Falls have looked at this. I know that a number of other contiguous communities or situations like us where, you know, you can only have a village inside of a town. You can't have a town inside of a village. We are part of the town, even though we're a village. Similar to the town of Woodbury and the village of Woodbury, but they got their start much later than ours. We've been a village since 1884. They did this more recently, I would say within the last 20 years. And what Senator Skoufis is looking to do, and I'm sure there are other legislators up in Albany that are probably doing this first, or doing this also, but he put out a letter about Woodbury has a problem, it's time for a solution, and suggested, and I'll just quote, "I'm committed to sponsoring and putting forth the full force of my office behind passing special legislation." Now, this legislation would combine the two into one community. They would basically share one board. So instead of having a town council and a village board, they would have one council. So everybody that's elected would step away. They would have a separate election for just those, I think they're 5-member boards there. They would just have a special election for that 5-member board that would then be in charge of everything. But he mentions that there is a catch. Under state law, even though this legislation is going to be pushed, under state law, majorities on both the town and the village boards must pass resolutions supporting this special legislation. Otherwise, the state Senate and the Assembly cannot bring it up for a vote. Senator Skoufis says, once the legislation is finalized in the coming days, I will be formally requesting both boards pass the required resolution, and then I will, who's fully putting the community, blah, blah, blah. Okay, then it gets into politics. So the thing is, as we go forward, this is a conversation that the town supervisor and I have been having about this. Where does this come here? Is this next? Because we're in a similar situation. Now, Woodbury has different, you know, the town runs some things and the village runs some things. We have, everything is separate. Although the village maintains water for everybody, the town maintains the sewage treatment plant. We have our own fire departments, we have our own police departments, we have our own DPW or highway. There is some differences, but I just want to put it on the radar that this is something coming down the road, and I want the trustees and the village board to be considering this, because the people that I talk to here, I've never heard, I shouldn't say I've never heard, but I haven't had a lot of people say to me that, oh boy, that'd be a great idea for us to merge services. We looked at that one time with the police services and it just didn't make sense. People liked having their own police department here, and the cost savings was not massive enough to warrant doing it. And the other is that people in the village like having their own government. So I'm just saying, nothing we're doing tonight, nothing has been said about Cornwall and Hudson, but something on the horizon. I'm always careful when I study what's going on up in Albany about what could possibly impact us down here. Even year elections is one of those things. We're a village, we like having our elections in March, not in November with everybody else, and does that come next? So just something to think about. I don't know if the board has thoughts or opinions in regards to a potential merge. I don't think anybody's heard, I certainly haven't, that it's coming to Cornwall, but it's something that I talked to the town supervisor about and to the board about. All right, okay, that's that item. Next thing is, Dave, can you give us a quick update on paving? Because everybody asks me every day, why isn't Mountain Road repaved? Why isn't Deer Hill Road repaved? Why didn't you pave this street? Why didn't you pave that street? And there's a lot of factors that go in place. Cost, grant money, money that we get from the state, CHIPS money, when that's available, what we're in line to get, the weather, and triage. What do I mean by triage? Well, sometimes we're so busy repairing things from the storms that happen that other projects that we would like to do, whether it's sidewalks or whether it's paving, gets pushed off. We were planning to, and I know we've made an adjustment, having Mountain Road at an almost zero cost to the village, because this was gonna be done via money from Central Hudson, because of the work they've done and that they're on the hook to fix for us. As well as CHIPS money, but we've had a slight adjustment in schedule. Dave?
Well, after discussing with you and some of the residents and whatnot, we've made the decision we're going to postpone Mountain Road and Deer Hill Road till next season. That's at the request, we're gonna have some engineering done to kind of see look at the storm sewer infrastructure, see what kind of improvements we could try to get worked in the project now instead of after.
So we still have projects from the July 9th, 2023 storm that ravaged us. We still have monies that we're waiting on from FEMA. We've gotten some money. Monies that we're waiting on from the United States Department of Agriculture. And some of that money is gonna play into this, but to Dave's point, as we're trying to work on the stormwater system, does it make sense to lay a fresh coat of asphalt down and then go dig it up because you gotta make a culvert next to it larger? So trying to factor that in. And the other issue is this: it's one thing just to slap some asphalt down and make it look nice and pretty and everybody's happy. But as you keep adding layers and layers, the water sloughs off in different directions and in different rates and in different amount or volume. And those are concerns that we're, looking to have to mill places, meaning take the asphalt down before we put new asphalt on top.
Yeah, so we're gonna have funding obviously from FEMA and USDA for some infrastructure work up there. We did secure a couple $100,000 from Central Hudson for repaving. So that money will stay off to the side. We're not gonna use any of that. Any of the money that I'm gonna use this year for paving is gonna be strictly CHIPS funding and village funding.
Okay.
I do have, we're looking to do paving on River Avenue, Churchill Street, Lafayette, Elpis, Washington, and Taylor. All those roads have great bases and the surfaces are cracking and whatnot. So we're gonna do a pavement place surface treatment on those, which is the same as we just did on Maple Road and Hudson Street. It lays you mill the road down 1.5 inches and then you put a polymer base down before you put the asphalt down. And it really works well for, you'll get 20 years out of it.
Any shot at knowing when can we do this in the spring? I mean, I've had a number of people, you and I have talked about it, complaining about Braden Place.
That's a whole nother ballgame we're gonna get into. We're gonna look at something like that. That's full depth reclamation. Basically removing the road, you're gonna remove 8 to 10 inches of.
And that's a lot of square footage. That is a huge, huge cul-de-sac.
That road is just oil and chipped. It's never been
It's
paved.
never been paved, which is why I'd love for us to factor in when we can get that done. And I know it's gonna be expensive.
That's an expensive process and time consuming because you have to remove the road. Then after you do that, you have to go in and then adjust all your structures to the height of the new road.
You're talking about the grades for water.
Yeah, so you're gonna have a couple months of dirt road.
Yep.
So it's not something you can start mid-season.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you for that. Next item, Village Code refresher related to swimming at DMP, which is Donnie Memorial Park, and water safety. There are 2 signs down at the waterfront that clearly state that there is no swimming in the Hudson River. And, sometimes when I tell people all the time, when you put a bunch of rules like we have down at the bottom of the hill, at the bottom of Dock Hill Road, nobody reads them because there's too many rules there. So I'm gonna have some small signs, similar to the signs that we put by the pavilion that say, do not remove the picnic tables from under the pavilion, that just say, no swimming. It was a number of years ago that a kid died at the beach there, right? Didn't he get dragged underneath or something, was swimming out there? Like in the night, Scott Prine mentioned it to me the other night, back in the 90s, that some kid was swimming out there, and I guess there was some debris down below. Wasn't a great swimmer, and got caught like just a few yards off of the shoreline and drowned. So anyway, just want to make sure, because of recent, I've had 2 people call me, and I saw one person doing it during my tours around the village. But we're just going to remind people that there is no swimming down there. I got no problems. I've done it myself. If somebody wades out up to their shin with their dog and they're in the Hudson, no one's going to come down there and ticket you for that. But there are people showing up down there with flotation devices and literally sitting out in the Hudson like, they're in their backyard pool. And unfortunately there is, and I'm guessing, Joe, maybe you know better, is this just a liability issue, or is it PCBs, or is it, who makes these rules that about this? You've never been able to swim down there. Do we know what the reason is?
No.
Okay, there you go. All right. Mike, Dave?
Ixnay.
You can't.
Yeah.
In the village code.
Right,
It's in the village code.
but do we know what the,
122.
understood? But we don't know the reason why. Did something happen where we made that law as this happened, we're gonna make a law for it? Or is it, nobody knows. All right,
I don't know.
I don't think it's a state thing.
1982.
Yeah,
Well, that was when it became the village
Yeah.
code. Yeah.
Just
Okay.
Ixnay on the PCBA's. Yeah, I don't think we want to mention.
You know? Oh,
Didn't they clean all the PCBs out of the Hudson? Or I'm told. No.
really?
There was a recent report where they
don't you
reviewed the dredging process and found that they hadn't quite done it.
Yeah, been in the Hudson forever, but okay. All right. Doesn't seem to bother the stripers every spring when they come up. Oh, yeah, they get bigger. That's true. All right, moving on. Hometown Heroes banner. Okay, good news to report on that. While we were trying to become a business banking district, because Cornwall and Hudson only have one bank. And Derek Wincoop, who's the CEO for Walden Savings Bank, which is the only bank in Cornwall right now, was trying to get us to be a BBD or a BDD. I forget what the acronym was. Better Business Banking District, which set you up for like a $10 million deposit that the state puts into the bank, and then the bank can loan that money out. It's a good thing. We didn't qualify. Remember what I said about being a community of means and why it's harder for us to get grants and why we have to be careful about what we turn down or don't do because we don't have as many opportunities? Well, when that didn't work out, Mr. Wincoop committed to Josh, the town supervisor, and myself that he wanted to do something to help in any way possible, and we had talked about a Hometown Heroes banner program. So Josh and I have been talking about this. We brought a couple of people on board. We brought Pete Krupesky, a retired Master Sergeant from the U.S. Army who runs the American Legion Post 353. Scott Teresi, who's in charge, is the president of the Greater Cornwall Chamber of Commerce. And I grabbed the deputy mayor, who's an Afghanistan veteran and a 20-year service member, just to come up with what we wanted to do. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We looked at what Fishkill did. We looked at what Washingtonville did. We looked at what Monroe did. We looked at what the village of Montgomery did. You go through some of these towns and you see these wonderful tributes. Well, some of them do it specifically military related, and there are so many different rules and so many different metrics on how they do it. What we decided as an ad hoc committee, not an official committee, was that we wanted to include the fire service because we have had firefighters, one in the village that died line of duty, Thomas Ringelhand, and Kenneth Kumpel also died on 9/11, a resident in the town. We've had police officers die in the line of duty here, hit by a car, had a heart attack. We've had people that would be that police, fire, EMS that rise to that level too. So we got to reach out from Regina McGrade, who lives in the village of Cornwall and Hudson and is a member of the Newburgh Rotary Club. Cornwall has a robust Lions Club. They do a lot of stuff, really a lot of great stuff. We don't have a Rotary Club, and we are part of the Greater Newburgh Rotary Club. And she made an offer and said, I'd love to help. I'll do the sign designs. There's a program for this. The Rotary Club would help you guys get this going, but obviously there's things that we need to do. We need to get with Central Hudson. We need to pick out which poles they're gonna go on. You don't want them on every pole. You don't want the clutter you want them spaced out, sequenced the right way. You want them to go up for Memorial Day and either come down on Labor Day or come down on Veterans Day, which is November 11th. You don't want them left up year round, but there's other things that you can use those posts for. If it's a Greater Cornwall Chamber of Commerce event, shop local, shop small, they could put up signs that our boards would approve. If it's the 4th of July and the 4th of July committee wanted to do something, we could do it just patriotic stuff for them. So there's a lot of different things you could use those posts for. The posts aren't expensive. They would have to be installed by us. I'm looking at you, Dave. They would have to be installed by our highway departments, which would be fine. We want to start conservatively. We wanted to do 10 to start and have them up before Veterans Day, which is November 11th. Unfortunately, the program, they have to be in packs of 15. So we're looking at maybe doing 9 military and maybe 6 fire service, EMS, police department. We have so many people in this village, in this town, off the top of your head that you can think of. Ray Mellon, who spent time in a prisoner of war camp for a year during the the Korean conflict. This was one that was interesting we talked about the other night. Mr. Ken Cashman. Now, one of the rules is you had to at least have lived in Cornwall, been from Cornwall, or currently live in Cornwall. Who's more Cornwall than Ken Cashman? So, these are things that you have to have a committee that decides what that's going to be. Captain Paul Buddy Buca. There have only been 3,715 Medal of Honor recipients in the entire history of this country. We gave the first one out, the first award recipient at the end of the Civil War in 1865, 3,715. The state with the most amount of Medal of Honor recipients, we live in it. The village and town with the largest number in New York State per capita, town of Cornwall and the village of Cornwall and Hudson. We have 4 that were awarded posthumously, and with the passing of Captain Paul Buddy Buca a couple of weeks ago, who had just moved back to Cornwall and was living up on the mountain with General Bell and his lovely wife Chintz, we have 5, which is a staggering number. But those are people that we would want to include. And then we'd have to go through a process. Maybe we'd go back, and if you've got a family member that fought in the Great War, or in World War II, or in the Korean conflict, and then figure out where would we place him. Senator Larkin, wouldn't he be somebody who served in combat in the Korean conflict and in the Vietnam War and World War II? Talk about the trifecta. Somebody like that who lived in the village of Cornwall and Hudson. The tough part for us is going to be winnowing this down to a small number of, I hate to say worthy, they're all worthy, and anybody who served in any capacity is worthy. But we're struggling with that right now. No good deed goes unpunished, is trying to figure out how best to do this. We're committed to coming up with 15, which we will work through, and then getting the bank to help us, and then figuring out how we're going to implement this, and then what the process is going to be going forward for who is potentially a candidate for this. Not just somebody that raised their hand and says, well, I want my face up on a billboard up there, and I'm willing to pay the $200 it's going to cost. So, we have to figure out how to do that. But I trust you. We will put a committee together. We have an ad hoc one right now, but we're not going to be the committee. We'll put a committee together from the right walks of life to make that decision, and it'll be a volunteer committee, and we'll come up with something. But we're excited to say to look forward to Veterans Day. You're going to see a spruced up look around here. And the next thing is, and I hate to be behind the town in anything like the EV charging stations, but the town, I believe, is already in a position next year to put some secular holiday symbols lighted up on telephone poles along Main Street, which I think is just going to be absolutely gorgeous. Snowflakes, candy canes, sleighs, Christmas trees, whatever. I mean, they have to be obviously secular, but there's plenty of things that will really brighten the place up. So keep your seatbelt buckled. We got a lot of good stuff coming. Okay, next item is, that was that. Michael, really quickly, so I read the bad news that we are in the, what was it, the 40th percentile, or what was the
We scored a 40 out of 100 possible points.
Well, it's been a while since I was in elementary school, but I believe that number means a failing grade. So we had our village reviewed for cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is an important thing. Every week something comes up on one of our emails, and we're like, don't open that. It's a phishing scam, or it could be a security breach. So the way that cybersecurity works is there are 4 bad nation-state actors. We all know who they are: Iran, China, Russia, North Korea. Those 4 countries work overdrive, trying to steal state secrets, trying to steal military secrets, and trying to steal intellectual property. Then you got the hacktivists, and you got the bad state actors that are not actual states, but people that want to go on, like the Sony hack, or they want to go in and steal information and then publish it, whether it's OPM, the Office of Personnel Management for the federal government, where all my information was released, your social security number, where you lived, what your blood type is, your home phone number, all those kind of things. So we've got to do a better job of, I've gotten out of the habit, because I'm not in the FBI anymore, where there were so many security measures related to physical security as well as computer security. But our Mike set up for the village and all the superintendents attended it. And Mike, you want to give a quick dump on what we learned in that visit by an outside company that came in and review our cybersecurity?
Sure. So
Vulnerabilities.
it was completed by Fish Technology Solutions. They completed a complete audit of all the village work sites, their computer systems, any policies, procedures that we may have in terms of technology. And they gave us, I believe it was like a 20-page report. Real quickly, it looks like there's some infrastructure that we need to purchase, some technology. There's some policies and procedures that we have to put in place. Recently, we had one of our email accounts had been compromised, and that's been fixed. But one of the things that New Windsor IT did was they instituted two-factor authentication on that email, and now they want to do that village-wide. So just there's a lot of policies, procedures, and a little bit of hardware.
All right. Do the trustees have a copy of that report? Yeah. Thank you. All right, just take a read at that. And Doris, let's put cybersecurity on the work session agenda for the 9th to discuss with the village board and to see what path we want to take going forward. Thank you for that, Mike. All right, next item of business is, what are it's for cybersecurity update, village, fee adoption. So yes, I thought tonight was gonna be the night. The deputy mayor's not here, but he did work in concert with our intrepid, code enforcement officer to come up with, Mrs. Gaza, some cost savings on our fee schedule. So we did an exhaustive scrub of what the town charges versus what we charge. What we charge versus what a similar sized village in the local area was charging. And Manny came up with some recommendations. Look, there are some things where we do charge more than the town for, and it makes sense. When you look at the code and you look at the updates and you look at the advisements from the building department, it makes sense. That we don't charge people fees just to pay for a code enforcement officer. It doesn't work that way. It's a necessary thing to keep things safe in the village. But I want to make sure that people want to do business here, whether it's a contractor, whether it's Mrs. McGillicuddy who just wants to put a ramp up to her house because she can't walk anymore and wants to use it for a wheelchair ramp. We want to make it easy for them. We don't want to bleed them of money, but this costs money to do this, and there has to be a cost offset on that. And it's also important for the village that we make sure that things that are being done are safe. So it is going to be, and I was promised this morning, we will discuss it September 9th. We will pass it September 16th. That's our commitment. And the discussion should be really easy and really quick because the trustees have all looked at it and we're good with it. We just want to get it passed. All right, outstanding. Okay, all right, getting close to the bottom. All right, I think that's it, except for your information. So last, August 20th, 7 p.m. Where did Vishwa go? He slunk out of here quick, huh? 7 p.m., the planning board, which Vish is a member of, will be here in the village boardroom at 7 o'clock. August 24th, the Jimmy Buffett Fest is going to be conducted at 7 p.m. at Donnie Memorial Park. Mike, is this one Jimmy Buffett guy, or is it a different Jimmy Buffett people?
It's a tribute band, Parrot Beach. They travel around.
Just play all the Jimmy Buffett songs.
Correct.
All right. So we can expect to hear Cheeseburger in Paradise.
Absolutely.
All right. That's all I cared about. All right. August 31st, as we previously discussed, swimming and diving car wash from Cornwall Central High School, 12 to 4 p.m. at Village Hall. September 2nd, office is closed for Labor Day. So that means everything except for the police department and any emergencies that we have that come up in our DPW or water department. Everyone else will be off that day. So don't expect to get anything done here at Village Hall. And September 4th, wow, the first day of school, hard to believe. Camp ended. We had a successful camp, village and town. It ended last Friday. I stop by once a week just to shake hands and kiss babies and do what politicians do, getting a chance to talk to the parents when they drop kids off, talk to the kids, talk to the counselors. It is a tough endeavor when you have 250 kids The camp counselors do a great job, the staff does a great job in one small place. We're not sure next year what the status is gonna be. I anticipate one more year of conjoined camp, whether or not it's at Lee Road School, which I guess we're supposed to call Cornwall Elementary School now. We don't call it Lee Road anymore.
Oh,
That's the way they refer to it as, or where it's gonna go, whether it comes back here. But in all likelihood, it is gonna be a conjoined camp again next year. So it's just what we have to do while the school system is doing all their capital improvement projects, so. Okay, that's all I have. I will go around the table. I'll start with you, trustee Paleota.
Do we want to do
Public
public
comment.
comment?
Oh, that's, of course we do. All right, I'm sorry, I forgot. Public comment. If anybody would wish to address the board, you have 3 minutes. Just state your name and where you live.